All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good morning, Michael. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Michael Franklin accepted our invitation to the show. Michael, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Let's go back to the beginning in your life. Were you born like in a musical family? How old were you when you perhaps began taking piano lessons?
My family wasn't musical, but I did have an uncle that sang country music on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm originally born in Buffalo, New York, which doesn't seem to be the type of place where country music would be popular on the radio. But
Yep.
My uncle did play music on the radio, but I never heard it, and I only met him a couple times, and he had no effect on my musical future. My musical future probably started because I was a sickly little kid, and I had a very serious operation when I was 5 years old, and they put me out on a farm in East Aurora, New York, with my great-grandparents who spoke no English.
Wow.
So there I was between 5 and 6 years old, and I lived with my great-grandparents on a farm. I learned a lot about farming at that time, but the thing that did work out is that they did have a piano there, and I started fooling around with the piano when I was 5 or 6 years old, and they had no television. They did listen to the radio, and at that time I couldn't play with any kids because the operation was so serious that I had things attached to me, and I really couldn't go anyplace. So my parents would come. They gave me maps and globes and a chemistry set and that kind of stuff. And those are all the things that I got good at, traveling the world. And I studied to be a doctor, but I bailed, to do music. I was in the lab. I was in the cathedral playing the pipe organ more than in the lab doing experiments. So,
I know what you mean.
I started my first band. My dad was he was a Mr. Fix-It kind of guy, worked in a steel plant. And he made my first microphone with a reverse speaker from the ceiling. So with a string, the speaker hung from the ceiling, and it sort of moved around, and I could sing into the speaker.
Yep.
And he made the home stereo so I could plug my first guitar into the home stereo and sing through the microphone in my garage. And, the Beatles probably were where I started. The Beatles and the Ventures.
Gotcha. Yeah. Perfect. What kind of, when you were like in high school, 15, 16, what kind of bands were you listening to? Was rock, rock?
Well, I moved from Buffalo, New York to outside of Chicago in 1968, fall of 1968. And I'd already had bands in where I lived in Buffalo. In fact, one of my bands I had, we won a contest, a battle of the bands sort of contest. And I never played keyboards before. And they had a keyboard in the studio. I was just singing, and they made me play a solo on the keyboard. And from that record that we did was a band called The Movement.
Yep.
And the song was called Left Silently. We won a contest, and I had to become the keyboard player because I played this little 4 or 5 note solo on the keyboard. And from that, the band got pretty popular, and I got better and better. And when I moved to Chicago, outside of Chicago, in Indiana, rural Indiana, there was no bands there. So I immediately hooked up with a couple of people who could hardly play, and I started a band. And I had the first band in my city. And because it was the first band in the city, it was the only band in the city.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean, man. Yeah.
So I started playing the dances, and while the kids were off, doing their newspaper routes to make money, I was doing a concert every week at the YMCA or at the high school or at the VFW. And that's how I got into being a singer and keyboard player.
Good. Yeah, I have great memories from Chicago. I went to when I arrived here in the United States, I went to school there, so I have great memories. It was very cold though.
The funny thing that shows you how fate works. The only picture that I have from my original band when I moved to Indiana called GUM, Great Underground Music was the name of the band.
Gotcha.
And the only photo that I have is we are playing the debut of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida.
Oh yeah.
This was 1969 sometime at the March something 1969 at the Sadie Hawkins dance, and there's a picture of, and I'm playing bass at the time because I would do the intro to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida on an organ, and then I'd play bass.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Right. Well, years later, I would join Iron Butterfly.
My God.
So 1969, I think I don't know, 2001 or something like that. I joined Iron Bar with the last surviving members.
Yeah. My God, man. Connected the dots, you know, that was like a destiny, maybe, or not. I don't. Have you ever looked back now to where you started and then try to connect the dot? If you haven't had that operation, maybe you would have not learned to play the piano or live in a farm, and then things were as if somebody was pointed you in the right direction and connected the dot. And I mean, you have done so well financially in your life and groups and with music and videos and corporation that, you know, I don't know.
Well, I don't think I really think that my life, truthfully, I'm not being egotistical. It's not about the ego. It's just about destiny.
Yeah.
My life has gone through so many drastic changes.
Yeah.
You know, from moves and thing went, you know, and living in China for 15 years, which is at the end of the story. But, you know, because I love the music so much and I was apt to jump in and learn this, because at 5 years old on a keyboard, that's the only thing I could do. So I had my bass in that, but, you know, I couldn't carry a piano around. So then I got into the guitar. And it's fortunate that I learned how to play the guitar, because later on in life, watching guitar players' hands, I was always a jump ahead of everybody else, because I could see when I played with Chuck Berry, before he started the song, I knew what key we were going to be in. You know,
wow.
Oh, he's going to do Johnny Be Good in A flat. Oh my God, here we go. You know,
good for you, man.
You know,
good for you. That you started your first recording studio, I think it's called Futuresound.
My very first recording studio was called Futuresound. Yeah.
Feel free to elaborate on what band were you working with at the time? I think it's Danny and the Junior, Luke Christie.
Yeah, the very first bands I worked with were the band called, actually how I got into doing the oldies, which the old, 50s and 60s music, which was really a great thing because it was very stylized. You know, my first recording studio, I had Danny and the Juniors and the Drifters, and then a jazz group too. The people used to play with Ramsey Lewis, Eldee Young, and Red Holt.
Yep.
And they came in the studio and did some things. And I was a little bit into jazz, and then into the rock and roll. And my band would go in there, and instead of just playing like how a lot of people play with oldies bands, they would play their own version of an old song. I mean, my case in point is the song "Shaboom" by the Crows. Now, most people in the 50s, they know the song by the Diamonds, a very white version of the song. But when Danny and Juniors came into studio, they wanted to record Shaboom. We did it exactly like the Crows version. You know, very, very authentic. You know, early rock and roll was an extension of the big band era. The people who were playing rock and roll, like Bill Haley and the Comets, for instance, the kind of guitar and everything that played in that was not rock and roll yet. It was still the people from the big bands who were trying to make a living in this new thing called rock and roll. And so everything had a little bit of a jazz tint. You know, think of Rock Around the Clock for a bit. You know, everything was sort of swing with the string bass and the guitar solo, you know, that very big band jazz. So we were into jazz. So when we played the rock and roll, we took that into account, and we wanted everything to be authentic. With that, we gained the respect of all these different people that we work with, because we would do it perfectly.
Wow.
You know. Yeah. And that was our thing. Okay, that's not the right sound for that song on the guitar. Yeah, he used this kind of guitar and that kind of amp, so you got to try to emulate that. So when you went on stage, you got that sound, and then the artist would turn around. Yeah, man, you know, like, hey, that sounds exactly like it. So we took pride in that, and with that, in the production of things, I always took that into account. You know, I was studying every kind of music. I had great teacher. And with that, you know, you not just do rock and roll, but you study classical, you study jazz, you study world music. I mean, I got my Grammy nomination for reggae of all things, and I jumped right into reggae. I listened to reggae night and day for weeks before I got my first recording assignment, recording the very first reggae festival after Bob Marley died. And I got to record Rita Marley, the I Trees, Third World, Eka Mouse. I mean, everybody, Dennis Brown, Peter Tosh, everybody. I got to record all those guys. And it gave me a sort of a pride that nobody else is really understanding this kind of music, you know. I mean, in my world.
Right. Yeah.
So my journey through music has been like a heat-seeking missile. When I had an opportunity, I went there and jumped off the cliff and got into it, you know.
Maybe life is like that, Michael. Opportunities are there. Maybe, I hope, for everybody. Some people take it, run with it. Some people, they don't know what to do it, right? You knew what to do with it, right? So maybe,
Well, you know what?
right. Otherwise, from a kind of religion point of view, will be very unfair for some people complain, well, this country has been bad to me, or I didn't have a break as a musician, or I'm a piano player, nobody gave me a break. That will be unfair world, I think. And maybe the stuff was in front of people. Some people run with it like you did, I did. Some people didn't see it. I don't know what do you think?
A lot of people put up blinders about other kinds of music. It's just like some young guy. I went to Milton Nascimento concert, you know, here in Orlando, and I was in the line, and you know, everybody there is all Brazilian, and I know a couple of Brazilian musicians, and they say, "You like Milton Nascimento?" I said, I started singing, you know, one of the songs. I said, "Yeah, I've been into him forever since, you know, forever." You know, why would I why? Because I'm a white guy, I'm an American. I can't respect that, you know. So a lot of people have, if something hits you, I mean, first off, I was into him because he played with Wayne Shorter. Yeah. And then John Anderson, who I work with, did songs with him. And what's her name? Esperanza Spalding recreated some of his songs, and I love the way she did them. It's like, okay, I've heard that song by 4 different artists. So, you know, and there he was on stage. I mean, he's like in his 80s and, you know, singing. What a fantastic band. But I've never turned myself off to any kind of indigenous music, or, you know, when I was down in Argentina, I you know, listened to the tango, and, you know, I just jumped into it. When I was in China, I sort of got to be a little bit of an expert on Chinese music, you know. I mean, my wife's Chinese, and she's a piano player, and I would, you know, I'm doing a Chinese song right now for an artist, you know.
Good for you, man.
You know.
Yeah, I saw Milton Nascimento like a couple of months. So he was the same tour. He would play here before he went to Florida. Very good guy. Very good. He's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. Somebody at, I don't know, 80 years old or whatever, he need to be carried to the stage, and somebody put him on the seat, and it's okay. But the guy still has a great voice, and somebody.
I got to be friends with his son, and they invited me to come out to a concert in California. Actually, I invited John Anderson to come out, but John lives too far away from LA, just not logistically good. But you know, working with some people like John, you know, each thing has its story, of course, of how I got there. You know, but you know, as far as the things that are doing well for me now, which is like I'm on John's chapter 2.
Correct. Yeah.
Which I'm trying to finish this month because he's going out on the road in April. And so we're communicating daily. I just sent him a shopping list of things I needed him to sing. So,
yeah.
So normally the process is we work telephonically and over the internet for an interim, and then we will finally get together and put in the final pieces and do the final mixes and, whatever. But, I'm sort of the cruise director and casting director,
How you manage? I mean, there are early in the beginning of your career, you mentioned something very important. Are all the musicians receptive? For you are a producer, you're contacting people, you hire me to do an album. I want to do the best for you, but our musicians say, no, I don't want the guitar. I want the guitar to be like this or nothing, as opposed to where you invite three guys, three-string guitar, and all of a sudden one of the string musicians plays something great, and you say, man, that would sound great. Are the musicians receptive to that? To do the, they are fixed on an idea to.
I taught a class at Full Sail, the recording school here. I taught a class here called, producer from soup to nuts. And I had different examples of all the different ways it is to be a producer. Either you're just taking somebody's music and you're mixing it.
Yeah.
Or you're getting down with the artist and you help them, formulate their songs and perfect their songs. Or you're basically found an artist yourself and you see what they could do and you put together the whole thing for them and you do it with them. I mean, there's different variations of that formula, but I've done it all with famous artists where, I'm helping a famous artist right now put together songs. They've never written songs before. They've just been a singer, and it depends on what they think you could do for them. If they say, you've done it before, you've been successful at it, guide me. Or you get into the situation where, no, I like this. And you think, man, I'm giving you my advice. I don't think that that's good. This would be better.
Gotcha.
Sometimes musicians don't realize how much they're losing by their idea. And they're a famous musician and I'm just a producer, right? And they've got a style and they've got fans. And you have to tell them, yeah, I don't get that. I think you're shooting yourself in the foot. It has to be this way. Well, why? Well, me and my whole team, and I have a team, engineer, musicians, everybody that's involved with me, and they give me their opinions because to me, I'm a consensus guy. I'm not like a producer that says it's my way or the highway. I'm sort of like the decider. They all give me their input and it brews. And I don't do things fast. It takes me a long time to do a record because I want to do it right. And nowadays with the way vinyl is, it takes 10 months to get an album. So nobody's really in a hurry. You're planning a year ahead. I'm doing 5 albums right now. And some of them I don't think I'll see for 2 years, in the marketplace.
Gotcha.
So it's all apples and oranges, but I'm not trying to dominate an artist. I want to be their friend. I want to be their collaborator. I want to understand what they want to do. But when I think that they're going down the wrong path, I want to be able to tell them. I don't want to be like, I work with 2 different really famous guys. I work with Wolfman Jack, where I worked with them like this.
Yep.
Respected my opinion, and we were fine. If I screwed up, he'd take me over to the side and tell me I screwed up. And then I work with Dick Clark. And Dick Clark was like this, and I pulled him aside one time actually and told him, man, you're not getting the best out of me because you're telling me what to do and you're not, asking my opinion. And that changed. You got those dichotomies where you want to work with somebody in collaboration and make it right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, do I think I know everything? No, but when you're working in consensus with really great people, you get the vibe of you're going down the right road. And let's say, for instance, Robbie Steinhardt's album. That was an acclaimed success. Robbie actually came in and played on the John Anderson 1000 Hands.
The first one, yeah.
The first one. And then, you know, I didn't know if I'd like the guy because he was kind of a curmudgeon, you know, he was like very grumpy. And then we got to be friends. And then he would come over. His drive from Tampa is about an hour and a half, 2 hours. He would come over every couple of weeks, and we would get together for dinner or something. And then I decided, you know, hey, look at, you know, I had this one song that I was going to do with John and Billy that I wrote, and Billy Cobham played on it for the John session.
Wow.
And then I asked Robbie to play on it, and then Robbie played on it. And then that brewed up the idea of Not in Kansas Anymore. And I, you know, just a couple weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months later, hey, Robbie, you want to do a record? Nah, I don't want to do a record. You know, really? And we started talking about it, and then he came up with some ideas, and my brother and I got together. Next thing you know, that song, which is called Climb to Grace, was the first song that I did. And he was very proud of it. He was very proud that he played with Billy Cobham. And then I took him to a Billy Cobham concert, and him and Billy got to meet. And then it was like, all right, man, let's do this record. And it was his swan song. You know, I mean, he lived long enough to, we finished the record. We listened to the final mixes. I sent everything off, and we planned the tour. And unfortunately, just prior to his 71st birthday, you know, he had pancreatitis and passed away in July.
Yeah, wow, unbelievable. Yeah, we'll talk about that album in more detail in a couple of minutes. In 1984, you recorded your first solo jazz. I think it's called Jazz Vein, if I remember.
Jazz Vein. Wow, you know your stuff. In fact, I'm going to recreate one of those tunes on a new album I'm doing.
Really?
Yeah. One song on Jazz Vein is called Honey Butter, which I recorded with Chuck Leavell from Rolling Stones, who's a good friend of mine. Wow. On that album. Yeah. And I redid that song when I was in Japan. I reformulated it, and it's called Shinkansen, like the fast bullet train.
Yeah.
And that song's got Tower Power.
Wow.
And Billy Cobham on it.
My God.
And it's you know, the song was there, but that version sort of morphed into a brand new song. And that'll be on, my brother and I are releasing an album in January called Anahata, which means the color of sound. And that album will be out with that song will be on it. It's now called Shinkansen. And it's got, like I say, Larry Coryell, Tower of Power, Billy Cobham, Charlie DeChant, a couple, you know, great people on that album. And another song, which is called Indigo from Jazz Vein, which I got the chance to meet my hero, which was McCoy Tyner, you know, and I met McCoy at the White House. Anyway, I did a song on my first album called McCoy, Indigo. Yeah. And I'm recreating that song for a new album I'm doing with famous drummer, jazz drummer Rayford Griffin, who plays with John Luke Ponty and played on the John Anderson tour. Rayford's a fantastic guy, impeccable drummer, and I just feel compelled to do an album with him.
Ray's is a good friend. I interviewed him as well. I'm a big time Jean-Luc Ponty fan. I interviewed Jean-Luc as well. I'm going to be interviewing his daughter in the near future. And during the last tour of Jean-Luc Ponty, I interviewed all of them, the four of them. So I'm very happy. Ray's a very nice guy. I have met musicians that are not that great. Hey, I have met engineers that I'm a computer scientist that are not that great, but Ray's a very nice and down to earth, and he's a very good guy, man. I really like it. Yeah, he's
yeah, we went. I was in California like 2 weeks ago, and we went and saw Corey Wong, the young new guitar player, who I'm putting on a track.
Yeah, I need to check him out. Yeah, I don't know him. Yeah.
Oh yeah, his style is sort of like super funk, but with like he's going to be playing on a song with a big band called the Superstar Horn Section, which is like 6 horns, like super sax, which is the son of Joey D and the Starlighters.
Yeah.
Right, Peppermint Twist. His son Ronnie is one of the best musicians I know. He's got a band called the Superstars, and great horn section.
Good, good. That's great. In '84, you got like maybe a lucky break or something important in your life or magic in your life. You end up meeting Wolfman Jack, and feel free to elaborate what.
Yeah, well, I was playing in a theater called the Holiday Star Theater in Maryville, Indiana.
Yeah.
And we sort of became the house band there. My brother and I in our band, and we would play with the stars that come in that didn't have bands. The people were just like singers, didn't have bands, and we would go in and play. Well, one of the shows is Wolfman was the host, and he just really noticed us. And then we started doing some shows with him, and I got to be good friends with him. And then years later, when we moved to Florida to open up a club called Little Darling's Rock and Roll Palace, and we were doing television there. I actually went to the TV people as music director and conductor, and I told them, we had a host on the show who dressed up in a tuxedo and didn't really have any rock and roll credibility. And I said, I can get you Wolfman Jack for the show. And really? So I got Wolfman Jack as the host on the show. That bonded us even more. And then maybe 4 or 5 years later, we changed the name of the theater to Wolfman Jack's Rock and Roll Palace. And then he became the mainstay until he passed away.
Yeah. Wow. Is the place still open under a different name? Or?
No. It's been closed. In fact, they knocked it down. It was a brand new building too. Opened up in 1986 and was knocked down in like 1994. Replaced with a go-kart track. Well, it's Florida,
Yeah, well.
That's all I can say.
Plus a lot of.
Well, Wolfman was a great guy, and we were just talking the other day. I had dinner with the famous singer Lou Christie. Lightning striking again. I had dinner with Lou a couple nights ago in New York. He's one of my favorite guys, and we were talking about Wolfman. And what we would have done if Wolfman had lived. He would be the host of hosts. Life would be different because we were both great friends.
Yeah. Good. Hey, by the way, if you are in town close to DC, let me know. My wife she's from Colombia, and I'm from Chile. She's one of the best chefs in the world, man. According to me, you're free to come to the house with your wife when you are in town, and
my son lives very close to Washington D.C.
Where?
My third son. He lives in York, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, not that far, like a couple hours from here. Yeah.
We went to Washington last year for Christmas, and we spent Christmas in Washington with him and his wife.
You like it, this area, Northern Virginia, Washington, this area?
Oh yeah, very. I played some around there. I played there Lancaster, the folk festival with Iron Butterfly, and I played a lot of the venues with John around Maryland. I can't remember the places we played, but with 1,000 Hands. But it's nice. I have a friend that lives in New Jersey, and it's that same kind of area where it's old colonial America, a lot of old stone homes and rolling hills. And I have a daughter that lives in Virginia. She lives in Amelia Courthouse. Amelia Courthouse is right in the center of Virginia. Yeah,
I need to see where. Which city she lives? Or?
Amelia Courthouse, Virginia.
Oh, that's the. Oh, I thought that. I need to check it out. No idea what that is. Yeah. I live close to Reston. Northern Virginia, like I don't know, 20 minutes from DC. 25 minutes from the White House. So
she's about maybe an hour from DC.
An hour from me. Yeah.
Down south.
Yeah. Good, man. In the 90s, you began producing for cartoons such as the Felix the Cat, Hello Kitty, Walking with Your Own Studio, and then you end up producing Tommy Rowe, Gloria Gaynor, Spencer Davis, Edgar Winter, and Bobby Kimball. Wow, man.
Well, a lot of that's due to a friend of mine named Don Oriolo. Don is a producer himself, a musician and artist. His father was Joe Oriolo, the guy who drew the Popeye cartoons and the Felix the Cat cartoons and the Amazing Hercules and Chiquita Banana. He was the artist that drew those. Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah.
So Joe Aureola was the artist that drew all that stuff, and his son Don was a musician and producer, and actually in the 80s turned Felix the Cat, which was a dying entity, into a global brand in Japan, Europe. Felix got to be a very, very big brand worldwide. And I was producing an album for the singer Melanie. You know, I got a brand new pair of roller skates. You got a brand new key. Anyway, I was producing an album with her, and her husband had known Don. And then I traveled to England with my brother to do a concert where I performed with Rick Wakeman. My brother and I performed with Rick Wakeman. We did a tour. The Korg Synthesizer Company hired me to do a European tour. You know, show off the synthesizers in all the different capitals and all the music stores. And the first tour I went over, I met a bunch of English guys, and they invited me back for the British Music Fair. So I came back and played the British Music Fair, and one of the things was I was going to play with Rick Wakeman. So I brought my brother along with me, and we rehearsed with Rick, and we did the Six Wives of Henry VIII, all the stuff. And anyway, we got to be friends, and he invited us to come to his house in Camberley, and we stayed friends for a while. And he wanted to do an album, recreate Journey to the Center of the Earth. So I went over to the next year to his new house, which was on the Isle of Man, and worked with him a little bit there, and then brought the tapes back to the United States, and you know, put my band on it and produced it in Philadelphia at I can't remember the name of the studio, but I produced it there in Orlando at Full Sail, and that became Classic Tracks. The funny thing is the day I played Ronnie Scott's in London with Rick and my brother, a character named Brian Chatton, who is a piano player, songwriter, had worked with John Anderson in his first band, The Warriors. He worked with Phil Collins in Phil Collins' first band called Flaming Youth. He went on to play with Sheena Easton, the Hollies, a bunch of other people. Brian's a good friend of mine. He said, "Hey, do you want to meet John Anderson? This is where in Ronnie Scott's rehearsing." And I said, "Sure." So we went down the street, and John was there. First time I met him in a pub called the Admiral. And so we met him, and that was our first meeting. And it was like in 1980. Oh, wow, long time ago, 1980.
Yeah, 40 years
and
ago.
So I mean, we kept up a little bit of relationship. Brian had written songs with John, which were the predecessor of Chapter One. So in the 90s, when Yes went out to do their 90120 thing, Brian asked me to orchestrate 4 songs that he'd written for John. So I did, and then I went to meet with John about doing this record, and then life happened. John was on the road with Yes. I was doing Wolfman Jack, you know, and playing tours and the nightclub and television show, and it was so far away from being finished. About, I can't remember, 2015, I think, I was playing the Bakersfield Music Festival with Iron Butterfly. And I realized John didn't live too far away from there. And my wife is Chinese. She had never seen California. So I said, look, we're going to go out and play this concert. We're going to take a week off and just drive up and down the coast of California, you know, go to Napa Valley, see some friends in Los Angeles. She's excited. So we go out to Bakersfield. It's hilarious because the first night I get there, on one stage is all my oldies friends, all the guys I played with for 20 years in the oldies field.
Yeah.
And I see that they're rehearsing. So I walk over to that stage and I sit down next to Shirley Austin Reeves, you know, the lead singer of the Shirelles. Now, I haven't seen Shirley in 20 years because I've been in China and Japan. And I'm sitting right next to her, and she looks over at me, stone cold face, and says, "Hi, Michael, what are you doing?" I mean, I got to tell you, my hair used to be black, and now my hair is white and hardly any there, but she recognized me immediately. But I saw all my friends there, you know, that were playing Fabian and the Drifters and different people like that. But then I played with Iron Butterfly the next day, and afterwards I called John and we went and met, and we started talking about, the project that we'd worked on a long time ago. He's, man, I forgot all about that. I said, what? He said, I got the tapes in my basement. I said, well, why don't you get the tapes out and see what they sound like, right? So he sent me the tapes. Couldn't hear them because if I would have put them on a 2-inch machine, they would probably just disintegrated. They're, 30 years old. So I had them baked at a place in New Jersey, and they sent them back to me. They did the digital up there. They did the digital transfer. And I got it and I said, my God, it still sounds great, except for like the synthesizers were very dated. So my idea was, I told him, look, I'm going to do this with real instruments, because real instruments don't date. A Korg M1 sound 101, can't forget it. I know it's a Korg M1 sound 101. I don't ever want to hear it again. But a real grand piano, that will suffice forever. So I started working on it, and I sent him the very first rush of one of the songs. And he said, wow, nice guitar. I said, Larry Coryell, who I was producing at the time. So Larry came in and played, oh yeah, man, that's cool. And he played on that song, and then played on a song that I wrote for my mother. And so Larry played on it. And then Ian Anderson, yeah. Hey, do you know a good flute player? That's supposed to be a joke, but I'm pumped.
Okay.
All right. So Ian played flute on it, and it started like that. More and more and more people started, and I found a song, and I'd say, who would best fit that song? And there you go. I would just try to find people to fit the whole package, and then 1,000 Hands was born.
I got you. Wow, unbelievable. How you, from a producer point of view, let's say, let me make something up. You're doing an album from Johnny, any Johnny. Let me take this out, and then it's going to be 10 tracks, right? And you have a Rolodex, used to be a Rolodex or a computer, and your phone list of 100 musicians. How can you tell that, hey, from a drummer could be Danny Govlitz, can be Paul Vertigo, can be Simon Phillips, can be any. How you're able to determine and put together 4 or 5 guys to one particular track, and then you decide, well, I think from track 3, I want to switch that particular player, that drummer, and get another guitarist because the rhythm is different. And
I hear it.
How
I just hear it. I mean,
from a mathematical, I'm an engineer, I'm a computer science. From a mathematical point of view, there's no way somebody can make the decision out of 50 drummers that you have, 50 guitarists that you have, 50 bass player, to say that guy with that guy, that with that guy. It's a probabilistic, it's a combination, factorial thing. That
I just hear it. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's like, okay, what kind of drums would fit on that? Oh, well, I mean, I'm very aware of the different styles of the different people that I like. Let's say, for instance, I was at the Halloween Festival in October. That's sponsored by the String Cheese Incident. I don't know if you know who the String Cheese Incident is.
No.
Well, they're a band that have millions and millions and millions of followers. Now, I was turned on to that by my assistant, who's a younger guy, and I happen to know the father of one of the guys that is in the String Cheese Incident. He's a percussionist. Now, I've heard him. It's sort of like a bluegrass band, but they play all these these festivals where it's like jam music, like Fish and Grateful Dead. And they're one of those bands that they're very, very good musicians, and they'll take like Birdland by Weather Report. They open up with Birdland by Weather Report, bluegrass.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
picture that.
Right. So anyway, you look at hear a band, and then you say, in my list of songs, oh, I know the perfect song for them to do. in my world. So they're doing one song now. Or on that festival, I saw this young guitar player, Corey Wong, who I told you about. And he played, and he has got a 7-piece horn band. So I've got a song that's got Tower of Power on it. And my assistant showed him the record. He said, "Oh man, yeah, we Tower of Power. Well, you can play on this. It fits his style." I'm not looking for somebody to do something that's not what they do. I'm looking for something. Okay, God, I hear he's the guy in that. He's the guitar player on that song. I saw Joe Bonamassa on the internet playing Heart of the Sunrise by John. So I called up a mutual friend. I have a famous cellist, a friend of mine named Tina Gao, who I know works with Joe. And then she got a hold of Joe for me. Joe called me. He was be delighted to play on a track. I sent him a track of John's, and he did an amazing job on it. It's just I could hear he's the guy for that thing. What he's going to do, how he plays, and now I'm putting a B3 player on that song, who will make it more defined of what I sort of hear. It's like I can't tell you that this song here, when it starts out, where it's going to end. Some songs like Ramalama, John just sent me some vocals, and then his story, which is true, that he tells everybody, is I got the song before I left for China in the email, just the vocals, and I put it into my computer, and in the lounge in Orlando, I started working on it. I had like a 2-hour delay, and I got on the plane. I loved it so much I couldn't stop. I stayed up 14 hours working on the song. When I landed in Hong Kong, I sent him back the song, and the song is virtually finished. I just put real violin on it, and instead of my computer violin, and then I put 3 drummers on it: Matt Brown, Carmen Apiece, and an electronic drummer. And the song is exactly what it was. That song, came together like that. So it's sort of apples and oranges. Any given song has sort of a story to it, but a lot of it is, I hear what musician would be best on it. And the idea 1,000 Hands is it's, John Anderson collaboration with everybody. Who could you see him collaborating with? Well, everybody said, man, I'd love to see. I've seen Yes collaborate with Mahavishnu. That was the input to get Billy to play and stuff. And now I don't know how many songs I've done with Billy. Billy's doing 2 songs on my new album and another song on another album for me. And he's just a wonderful guy. I just like the guy so much. And he's still the innovator.
Wow. Joe Bonamassa is unbelievable guy. I have seen him many times when he comes here. And I was in London again. I went twice this year to London to see the last 3 shows of Genesis. And then I saw Bonamassa 2 days after Eric Clapton and so forth at the Royal Albert Hall. He's an unbelievable guy. I mean, unbelievable. But so you call Joe Bonamassa, right? And then that guy's not available because he's on tour, sick, whatever. He's not available for another month. So how do you do in the meantime? You in your head from a producer, but you say, well, I want to bring John instead of Joe, and because I need to wait for Joe another month, and that means that
some of it is, I'll tell you what, some of it is, I think about who would be best on a track.
Yeah.
And if it works out, I look up, first off, I don't, I want to put Tower of Power on a track, and I look it up, and they're in Europe. Well, that's not going to work, but fortunately for me, I was thinking about putting Tower of Power on a couple of tracks, and they were coming to Orlando in 2 months. So I had them do it here in my studio, which I prefer, Right. Billy's done tracks for me. Billy Cobham's done tracks for me, where he lives in Panama, but I prefer to do him here. When he comes here, my engineer, Matt Brown, is a great drummer and a great engineer. And we have, I don't know how many drum sets we've got here. And we got 20 something snares.
Yeah. Wow.
But when Billy came here, Matt had the drums all set up and all set them up perfectly, and even had done the sound check, to make them sound like Billy Cobham drums. And he's got the Billy Cobham drum collection in the computer, so he can hear them, right?
Yeah.
Billy came in, he moved one drum. It was like he was amazed. But the drums on those tracks sound fantastic.
Yeah.
When he does it someplace else, I have to deal with how they did it in the studio and whatever. But I look on the calendar. If somebody's coming to town and they fit the bill, then I contact them. Otherwise it's like who's gonna. I'm working on a song right now. I can't say because it's not locked down. But I met with somebody the other night and they're very interested in playing on it, and I had to think of myself, what song? No, you know what? That song, they wouldn't sound like them. You got to have a song that sounds like them, because if you put a famous artist on a record and it doesn't sound like them, what was the value of it? They're just another studio musician, and the punter, the listener, doesn't get the extra experience of those completists who love their artists. There's a certain passion you get to when you sit down and, for me, when I listen to a Chick Corea song, because I knew Chick Corea and I, whatever, and I get a certain, feeling for when I hear Chick play. I have a certain feeling when I hear people playing like Chick, So a lot of people don't consider that these musicians really have styles, but to me, they're so defined. And when I'm listening to something that, okay, great, Rick Wakeman played on a track, and it's so Rick Wakeman, maybe he can't help himself but be Rick Wakeman, it's like, okay, that's Rick Wakeman. I don't have to do nothing to that, But some people are trying to be innovative when they're giving you a piece, and it's like, man, it doesn't sound anything like you. Different guitar, different amp, different whatever, and you deal with it. You credit them, but I don't think the punter gets as much enjoyment out of it. When you've reached a musical identity, you're there. When you play any song and it sounds like you, for instance, I mastered 1,000 Hands with Bernie Grugman in California, right? Who's the master of masterers, right? He's done everybody, all my favorite artists, Joni Mitchell, Chick Corea. He's done them everybody. When he sits down to master the John Anderson thing, the first track I had him do at the time was Activate. And so he's in there working on the song, and wow, sounds like Larry Coryell. I said, it is. Well, it is. Wow. Man, that sounds like Ian Anderson. It is. That sounds like John-Luc Ponty. Yeah, it is. So the good thing about that was I think he was a little grumpy when he came in that day. Sorry, Bernie. He was a little grumpy when he came in that day. And after we did my record, he loved it. He really loved it. In fact, he did a thing on video for me about how much he loved the record. And then he canceled his next meeting with somebody to go out and have coffee with me.
Good for you, man.
We're talking about, some of my favorite artists and whatever. And he was giving me his feedback about, recording with Joni Mitchell and all these people. It's like,
wow.
It's the same thing. You're enamored by an artist. The artist gets into your system and you love that place. And when they all come together, 1,000 Hands was the idea of, how would Mahavishnu sound with Yes? How would Weather Report sound with Yes? How would Yes sound with what? Because John's the voice of Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes can go out and do whatever they want to do. Steve, he's a great guitar player, and he has the right to be Yes, but he's the only guy in Yes now.
Yeah.
And it's easy for a singer to be that band. And I think that's the way, John's going, and he should, because he is the voice and the innovator of Yes. I've worked with him. I know how he works, and he is Yes. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. I a couple of weeks ago, I saw the Steve Howe version of Yes, right? They call, and it's not Yes, right? But it's pretty good. I know when I buy the ticket, I know Yes. I know Steve Howe's going to be, he's playing with a lot of great musicians, and it's fine.
No, they're all fine musicians. It's not that. It's just that it's I think when you go to a band and you got 2 or 3 of the original people, when you get down to one, and I don't dismiss Yes in any way, because I love Yes music, and there's a lot of people out there to devout. The idea that they're still out there doing it at Steve's age is a testament to Steve.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know, so I'm not into that. You know, because I work with John, people are always trying to get me to diss Yes, and I won't. I won't. I mean, I think they're all really nice people. I've met, you know, some of them, and they're all really nice people.
Sure.
And the fans love it. The duration of the tour is testament to that people like that music. And always trying to everybody's trying to put me against the guys, you know. I mean, I've worked with Patrick Moraz and I've worked with Rick Wakeman. I have pictures of me and Patrick Moraz playing and Rick Wakeman playing the same piano. You know, I invited them both here for a charity, which should have been like, you know, gasoline on a fire, but it wasn't. They never really even met each other.
Really?
Yeah, they never. I mean, Rick was out of the band before Patrick joined the band, and then
Correct, yeah.
Patrick left the band before Rick joined the band again. I mean, they were inconsequential to each other in a way, but you know, they just now I took a picture of them not too long ago together. You know, it's whatever. You know,
That's beautiful.
bands are bands. You know.
No, absolutely. When you have like let me make something up. You have like you want to do a new record, right? For John Anderson, let's say that. You have a budget of whatever, a hundred grand, right? So the hourly fee for Joe Bonamassa in 2 tracks is that much. For the local guys, that much. And you do like the math at the beginning to see how long or how much would it take to put a record together, to try to make, as I say, my hypothetical number is 100 grand to do a vinyl, and maybe you will record that investment or not, or you don't have a budget to begin with, and you say, well, I want that guy to play in track 1, that guy to be in track 3, and some are more expensive than others, right? The hourly rate of somebody, or they are, or you're kind of
Yeah,
trading favors with people.
yeah, I know where you're going. It's all apples and oranges again. It's first off, I finance everything myself.
Right.
You know, the thing about it is that if I sit down and say, okay, look, I'm going to do this album. How much is it going to cost me to do it? Is there a market out there? And sometimes for me, if it's a break-even proposition, I may do it for the enjoyment of it, the camaraderie of it. Some of the things that I do, like Robbie's album, with a lot of stuff I wanted to get off my musical chest. You know, the album, though Robbie played on it, for 3 or 4 of the songs were written by my brother. The rest of them were basically written by me, and Robbie had his input, you know, but I credited him on all the songs because I wanted him to do the record. And I wanted to show him that I, like Jim Morrison gave all the guys in his band the credit. They didn't squander it all. I didn't want to squander it all. I wanted the guy, my friend, to do a record. So here, I'm giving you, I want your input, and you're part writer on these songs. So it's Franklin, Steinhardt, Franklin. You know, you're 1/3 of writing everything. You know, he'd give me ideas. He would sit down with his violin and play something. I'd say, okay, I'm going to try to incorporate that in there. But when you're talking about famous artists, some artists, you know, and I can't name it because some people want money. Some people don't want money. Some people want just their expenses to be paid to come and record. Some people just want the studio to be paid. They'll give you their time. I mean, some of my artists require a little bit of money. 1 or 2 that I've recorded a little bit disappointed because they wanted more money than I should have given them. And some I'm surprised they even want any money at all because they're well-to-do. But probably that's why they're well-to-do, you know. But a lot of people did it for free. You know, I don't want to cast like some of the most famous ones. If they want to play on it, they're going to play on it. And if you send them a song, I might send an artist 2 songs. I hear you playing on this, and I hear you playing this. You can do either one or both. You know, I hear you playing acoustic guitar on this one in this section. I hear you playing this kind of line from the sort of tone that you had on that song on that album that you did, right? That's and you know, with that in mind, I only got to play a solo there, right? I mean, Steve Morris didn't have to play through the whole song of Climb to Grace. He only had to play on two phrases of solo. He actually played on 3, but then Tommy Calton and Jim Gentry had, you know, one good chorus that was just, you know, I had to use. So, you know, Steve got 2, Tommy got 1, and Jim got 1. You know, I got the best of what I had. I had this whole palette of colors, and I just put together what I thought would be right. And if I like it, then I just got to look around to my engineer and my other guys. You know, for instance, the song Climb to Grace with Billy. There was a part, we call it a Steve Gadd kind of part, where the rhythm is happening and the drums are playing around that. Bow, bow. Right. You know, it's sort of like there's a little bit of a disjunct solo with rhythms, and the drummer's playing solos to accent those rhythms. So Billy's in the studio, and after he got done with the one song, he goes, "Okay, anything else you got for me?" I said, "Here, there's another song. It's very simple, Billy. It's right up your alley. There's a 4/4 violin section, and I'm in the other side of the window. 4/4 violin section, and it goes into a 7/4 rhythm, you know, which sounds sort of like a Mahavishnu thing. Sorry, bud. You know, so anyway, so he starts playing, and I conduct the thing, and then where the violins end, and he hears the rhythm, and he plays. And I tell him, I'm going to cut you off when the next part comes in. He stops. Next part that starts up is this thing where my brother was going to do a bass solo, but Billy, in his head, oh, it's like a Steve Gadd thing. Okay, great. So he starts playing, right? So he starts playing the solo, right? And my brother's standing next to me, and he goes, "Isn't that where my solo is supposed to be?" I said, "Shut the hell up, man. It's Billy Cobham." So Billy played the song all the way through, and at the very end, it started decrescendo in tempo, and Billy played it all the way to the end. So after a little bit of wait, he goes, "Okay, I'm ready to do it." And I walked out in the studio, and I gave him a hug. I said, "No, man, that's it." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, that was it. One take."
Wow.
You know, so it's not like a moment you could get some things that we did, like you might do a couple takes, but that was the take, and that's the take that's on the record.
Yeah. Wow. Unbelievable. One take, man. And then what's the process in your head to, okay, you expect X number of dollars to kind of record that investment? For example, right? I like I told you at the beginning, I see so many shows here in Virginia, and the bands, at the end of the day, they're recording their investment. Well, not a lot of people buy vinyl, but not everybody, right? So they end up recording their investment by selling T-shirts and signed CDs or signed vinyl or a poster.
Well,
As if
it all
you're doing a
depends on,
record and you record that investment to merchandise, right?
you know, it's not the same sort of template every time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm as far as the album and the tour, 1,000 Hands, I was a producer of both the album and the tour. But sometimes if you did an album and then the tour is not with, it's different. So yeah, and on the tour, you know, we were making money, you know, of course, doing the concert and T-shirts and selling, you know, merchandise on the tour, and then of course the album, selling the album. But as far as I'm trying to make a work of art, you know, I just turned 70. I'm fine. To me, it's all about the art now. I mean, I can't shoot myself in the foot bad enough to be impoverished. So
Yeah.
I'm doing several albums. I'm not really worried about the cost of it. The record company's doing very well. It's getting a good exposure in the world. People who know about prog rock go to solarmusic.com, and I'm selling every day. You know, it's not, you know, billions of dollars, but it pays the bills, and it pays enough to say, okay, I'm going to keep doing this thing. And every album I come out with, it gets a little bit more cumulative to where I get more followers, more people buying the stuff, and two, I've got a great team that's networking with the mom and pop. We're selling all over the world. We sell it 38 countries now without being on Amazon or without being on, any other thing. 38 countries.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. How is to work with Patrick Moraz? I think I read somewhere that the tour that you guys did it was very difficult. You mentioned that it was a lot of work, and I think you have a video as well of that, right? Is that correct?
I have a video of it that I'm going to, say I have to, it's got to be cleaned up, remember, because this is from
1993, 92?
93 or something. But
Yeah.
It was the Story of I tour. He'd never toured with the Story of I. He never did live performance. We're the only people that ever did the tour. And it was the only video that exists on it. And it's really good. The music is note for note, not a single mistake on the notes. So I want to have it remastered and regenerated to perfect the video. But Patrick's been a dear friend of mine since about 1992. I met him at the Anaheim NAMM when I was playing for Kurzweil. I was playing the NAMM show for Kurzweil, and actually a chick came in when I was playing at Kurzweil and jumped up on my keyboard and started playing a drum solo, it was the first time, just the one thing is just all drums. He figured out the mapping, and he did a fantastic drum solo, and I just died laughing. I got a picture of that,
Good for you.
That's where I met Patrick, and Patrick had just he was just out of the Moody Blues, and we started talking. And then next thing you know, he came down to see me in Florida and stayed at one of my houses. And I had a grand piano in the house, and we decided to do a solo piano record, which turned into Story of I. Or now it's the Story of I, Windows of Time.
Yeah, wow. Good for you. In 92, you joined the Crickets, and they were for the opening of the musical body with Paul McCartney, another big name as well. Man, you need to think about you writing a book?
My brother and I are thinking about doing a podcast because he just walked in here a minute ago and started laughing when I was telling the Billy Cobham story because but I think we're going to do a podcast because we do have so much musical history that nobody knows that would be, I should write a book, truly. But like the Crickets, I just went to the eulogy. I did a eulogy last week in Nashville for Jerry Allison, the drummer of the Crickets, who was a dear friend of mine. I would say that, my dad wasn't really into me doing music. He wanted me to follow his footsteps at the steel mill. But years later, when my sister told him I was making more money than him, then he became a fan.
He was happy.
So, but I would say if I had another mentor, it would have been Jerry Allison, the drummer for the Crickets, the guy who, played on Peggy Sue and, That'll Be the Day. And he wrote most of the songs for Buddy Holly. People don't know that. But the manager didn't think it looked good for the drummer to be writing the songs. So they made Buddy write the songs. But Jerry got the money. Right. So anyway, I went to do the eulogy for the Crickets. I produced some things for the Crickets, and when the Crickets played the Buddy opening of Buddy, I got invited to come and have dinner with McCartney and play that that concert, and it was pretty wild. I keep telling everybody there's some things I can't say about that. It'll be in a book, but there's a couple things I can't say about a conversation that was amazing. But he came in to the Lone Star Roadhouse. At the time, they had the the Concorde. Flew from London to New York, JFK. Then he took a helicopter from JFK to the Pan Am building, which doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And then they take the elevator down and walk across the street to the Roadhouse. So on the show is Screaming Blue Jays, not Ronnie Millsap, Bruce Springsteen's band, a couple other people are on the show all playing, and I'm playing with the Crickets. Joby Malden, Gordon Payne, and J.I. Allison. And at the time, you know, they get to hear the walkie-talkies. He's coming down the stairs. Yeah, he's walking across the street. And at the Roadhouse, there was mirrors on the wall, and I'm sitting up against one of the mirrors so I could see. And this hand comes on my shoulder. And at the time, 1992, I think, I had a ponytail.
Yeah.
And he pulled my ponytail and said, "Get a haircut."
Wow.
Well, we had dinner that night, and it was great. And that night I met May Pang, the girl that went out with John Lennon. So I've been friends with May ever since. And that night, McCartney was with his wife, Linda, who was alive at the time. Yeah. And the whole table, at the memorial, I saw Gordon Payne and Sonny, the original guitar player. And I was telling him about the experience when we went to play, you know, the Roadhouse with McCartney. And I was telling Gordon, I said, yeah, I'm at the table, just looking down the table. There's Paul McCartney. I'm thinking to myself, that's Paul McCartney. I mean, he's always got to look good because everybody knows, because people are always staring at him. And Gordon hits me with his elbow and goes, "Mike, quit staring." And we just had a big laugh about that. Because, I mean, it was Paul McCartney.
Of course.
Really?
Unbelievable.
Paul McCartney.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Man, you mentioned so many famous people, man. You are a lucky guy, man. Feel free to elaborate on the Bruce Horsley at the Super Bowl in '92.
Well, there's an agent, and his name is Peter Smith, that used to use me to back up all his shows. And Bruce Hornsby was going to play at the Super Bowl, so they needed a band. So Peter called me up and said, "Hey, Mike, you want to play with Bruce Hornsby?" I said, "Sure, man." So he said, "Look, we only got the evening before the Super Bowl to rehearse. Here's the songs." So at one time I had two houses next to each other. One was my house, one was my studio at the time. And so I had piano in there, and we would rehearse in the house, and it was all set up. Bruce walked in the door, jumped on the piano. We were in the middle of playing one of the songs, and he just jumped on the piano and started playing. And we finished that song off. We rehearsed a couple others, and he said, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." And he left. So we played the Super Bowl. We did, you know, of course, The Way It Is, and Valley Road, and some other songs. And I stayed in touch with him. Every time he would come in the area, my brother and I would go see one of his shows. When he played with Bonnie Raitt, we went backstage. When he played one of his own shows in Tampa, we'd go. And anyway, we stayed in touch. And then when he's on John Chapter 2. So he sent me a bunch of songs to work on. I worked on like 3 of his songs, and one of them is going to be on Chapter 2. But I mean, I saw Bruce here a couple months ago doing a solo piano, and he's one of a kind. I mean, he's really got a take on it. He's really gotten into a different kind of music, really, and he's really into it. But the original Bruce Hornsby thing, I think the style of it stays in people's heads. So I offered him to play on Robbie Steinhardt's record. I said, "Because that's your style." He goes, "No, that's not my style anymore."
Used to be.
So, you know, you got to respect that. You know, he's moving forward. He's he's a very prolific, writing all the time, and he's a great piano player. You know, absolutely. So it was a joy to hear him.
In 98 to 2001, you were the musical director of the Hard Rock Cafe in Orlando. Was it beneficial for you to do that, or what was the motivation for you to become the?
I was music director at Little Darling's Rock and Roll Palace here in Orlando, and then Wolfman Jack's. Yeah. So that people were aware of me doing that type of job, being a music director.
Gotcha.
So, you know, basically what it is, like, you know, running the band, helping pick the people to perform, and insights into because the place wasn't even built yet when I was hired. Oh, you know, so I was there. We were originally going to have a recording studio in the basement, which never happened. We put a video studio in there, and we utilized that. The motivation there was just to have a great venue to play, and then I invited all my friends to play. I had, you know, the Crickets, Jerry Lee Lewis, you know, the Iron Butterfly, who I'm just releasing their album now, not Iron Butterfly, Blues Image. The brand new album will be out in about another month with Mike Panera, the original member singer. And so I would bring in Les Dudek and Pat Travers and Rick Derringer and Melanie and all kinds of people I knew. It became cost effective because the public didn't know that they all lived within Florida. So, I mean, it's very cost effective to get them here and to perform and then to keep them in the network, you know, like some of these people like Rick Derringer is like one of my favorite guys and one of the greatest guitar players alive. Very underrated guitar player. But you'll find that when you get on the subject of Rick Derringer, who was I talking? Oh, Rick Wakeman was just talking about Rick Derringer on an interview this morning. And, you know, Eddie Van Halen, Leslie West, Rick Derringer, all their favorite guitar player. Rick, I played a concert with Rick last year. We rehearsed the morning of the show. You know, we did his stuff, you know, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo and Still Alive and Well, Frankenstein, Real American, Guns and Money. We did all his stuff, you know, rehearsed. I got a video of it. It's just amazing. The guy's just a monster on the guitar. He has such control of the guitar. And I become very good friends with him, and he doesn't live too far from me. We see each other a couple times a year. You know, I go over there and have dinner with them. Wonderful people.
Good. Many musicians are or they have been moving down to Florida in the last, I don't know, 10 years, maybe, in the area where you live, Orlando. And
yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah.
I mean, Wolfman was the one who gave me the idea to move to Florida. We were in Chicago.
Yeah.
We played down in Orlando for some show. And then Wolfman looked at me one day and said, Mike, you know, you could save $1,000 a month just by living in Florida. I said, why is that? He says, because the airfares, everybody's got to go to Disney because the airfares are cheaper to go to Orlando than a lot of places. Really? So I talked to at the time I had a travel agent. She said, yeah, you could, you know, you're coming to Chicago. First off, I lived in Indiana, and O'Hare Airport is like 2 hours from where I lived. Through the worst traffic, Chicago, you got to go through Chicago or around Chicago to get to the airport. So it was grueling. And too, like in the wintertime, it was a pain.
Yeah.
So we played this concert down in Orlando and I checked it out. And then I got an offer to join a theater, you know, the Little Darlings Rock and Roll Palace that was owned by Fabian, the singer Fabian, and one of the guys in the Diamonds, and a guy who ran an attraction called Church Street. So they said, hey, you know, bring you down here. And a guy who had like a condo on a lake said, if you move down here, I'll give you the place for free until you can find a house. So I was like, the stars are coming together, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
Cheaper to live there. I don't have to pay rent for 6 months. So I'm saving this. So I moved down to Florida and then started the theater. And but, you know, in Florida, you don't have state tax. There's no state tax. So you're saving about 7-8% on your income. And I mean, solar studios, I mean, whole another part of my life is technology. So, I mean, solar studios is because it's all solar here. I don't pay any money for electricity. And, you know, in Indiana where I lived, I'd have to pay a fortune every month just to keep warm during the winter, you know. And in the summer, I'd have to pay a fortune to stay cool in the summer.
That's right.
Here it's, you know, Florida's a great place to live. I'm in the middle of the state. I got both oceans. I got 5 major cities I can play in, you know, and a lot of theaters here. And people, there's disposable income here. People come to Orlando looking to spend money on a show or a concert or something. So to me, it's all the places I've lived. I couldn't wait to get back to Orlando. I love it here.
Yeah, become more, from a real estate point of view, have become a lot more expensive in the last 5 years. I think, you know, the prices have been, you know, with inflation and everything else, been going up. But in Florida, I think, well, in Florida in particular, Orlando area, there's used to be a lot cheaper. Now the prices are are going up a lot in,
I think it's going up every place, but once you get entrenched in some place and your house is paid off and everything's then whatever it's going to be, whatever it's going to be. But I mean, I just feel kind of lucky that I did everything when I did.
I got you. What so eventually you end up moving and you live like 15 years in China, Japan, and why, you were single at the time, right? So what was the motivation of for you moving there?
Well, the motivation was Don Ariolo, who was doing Felix the Cat. He had me go over to Japan to work on a musical with Hello Kitty.
Yep.
So I went over there, and it was just so interesting to me. And I had been to Japan like 6 times before, playing with different bands.
Okay.
And at one time, the band with my brother, my trio, we went over to Japan and we stayed 6 and 7 weeks at a time at the American Club in Miyahama. So we met people, we were all single. So, I mean, life was a little bit different, but what happened was when I got the job with Hello Kitty, it was serious, and it was a serious position to be, writing music for that organization. And so I was there doing stuff. I was probably in Japan 2 years doing that. And then I ventured off into China. When I got to China, it was like, wow, this is the Wild West. So I had many different jobs in China. I have a musical job in China. My musical job was there because the cartoons were being made there. And then I got into technology there. Basically, my father had met some people at his golf club that needed a consultant in China. And I was just learning the language because I was committed. I was going to stay there for a couple of reasons. At the time, I had a relationship in China. And so I was bound and determined I was going to stay there. I'd been divorced 15 years. And I met somebody whose father was way up in the position of the government. So things were very easy access for me. And next thing I know, I saw a line of people going down the street. And what is this? In Shanghai. And I went down, I looked, what? It's a little tiny carnival. So anyway, I live in Orlando, where all the carnival people come to rest for the winter. They do their winter quarters, bring all their equipment, parked all over the outskirts of Orlando to weather the winter. And I started calling all of them to see if they wanted to go to China to do a carnival. Is that crazy? And most people hung up on me, but one guy didn't. And so I brought him to China. He saw everything. And then a year later, we brought $40 million worth of equipment to China to do a carnival. And it was very successful.
Wow. And
then I did in China, I probably did 7 carnivals in China between 2004 and 2022. The equipment just left Taiwan. It's on its way for a 5-year tour of Vietnam. So I've been to Vietnam 4 times this year, getting that all set up.
Wow. Did you miss the United States when you were living there? I mean,
I
10,
want to say, did I miss the United States? I missed my kids, but too, they're growing up, and when I'd come back, and I'd be in China for 3 months, and I'd come back for a month, see my parents, see my kids. Yeah. They'd see me the first day or 2, and then I wouldn't see them until I left. They got their own lives,
That's right.
It's hi, Dad. Great. Oh, we really missed you. Yeah. Can't stay long. Got to go, So after a while, I realized I didn't really have to come back. I came back for my parents. That was about it. But then too, once I bought my parents a computer and put it up there so we could Skype, my dad, he could press a button for email and he could press a button for Skype.
Yeah.
We used to watch TV. He used to put TV shows I couldn't get. We used to schedule, he'd get the TV and turn it up to the camera, and we'd sit there and watch TV shows together.
Yeah. And then you go for you. You met your wife, you got married, and then you decided, well, it's time for me to come back here.
Yeah. I think the magic was, my wife was a piano player, and I
Yeah.
played a big concert in the city I was living in called Xiamen, which is right across the Straits of Taiwan. Beautiful city. And I played there with a famous Chinese band, and her company was putting on the show. So after the show, I went to a party and everything, and I met her, and she's the only girl who didn't want to be with me. So I figured that's the one I want.
That's a good sign.
And and so it took a while to, because she didn't speak any English at the time. My Chinese was average, but eventually we got together, and I realized, I'm flying down to her city on the weekends, and she's working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. So I only get to see her half day Saturday and Sunday. That's it. So I, basically was like, okay, I come down here, I get to see you Saturday night, I get to see you Sunday, and then that's it. So how much money do you make? And then she told me how much money she made. And I said, look, I'm going to move to this city because I had business in that city. I was thinking about moving there for a while. And I'm going to come and live in this city. I'm going to get an apartment. You're going to quit your job, because she was making, for all that time, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, she was making $200.
My God, man.
So I said,
Terrible.
I'm going to pay you not to work. So I got a beautiful house right on the ocean, 23rd story. All you could see was ocean. I rented a piano, which I needed to practice myself. And then she started having students, and she was making her money with her own students, and plus she didn't have to pay for her house or anything like that. She was living with me. Well, part of the delay of coming to the United States was she didn't think she could do anything in the United States. So when we finally decided that I need to go back to the United States to make money because some of the stuff I was doing in China had ended, we came back, and I did that, kind of thing where you get the picture and you put the phone number on it so you could cut it up and tear off the phone number.
Yeah.
Right. So I put a picture of her teaching her kids and her awards and the TV shows and stuff she was on, all in Chinese. I stuck it up at all the nail shops and Chinese restaurants and Chinese grocery stores. Within 2 weeks, we had 20 students. So you saw, how much should I charge, Michael? I mean, she used to charge 35 cents. No, let's see, 35 renminbi. That's $3. She used to charge $3 a lesson in China. So I said, well, you're going to charge $50 a lesson here.
That's right.
No. Her father's a police chief and he makes $750 a month. Her mom's a nurse and she makes $500 a month. Her brother's a policeman or firefighter. He makes $275 a month. Right? Now she's got 38 students at $50 an hour.
Not bad.
I think she told her parents how much money was she making, and they all freaked out. No, you're lying or something.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that was the best thing ever happened to me, that relationship, because before, any relationship I ever had was like, are you done with your work? Are you done practicing? Are you going to work on that music all night? Now it's for me. I built her own studio here, and she's got students 5 days a week. And late at night, I was going, are you coming to bed? Are we going to watch a movie or what? So I'm, it's the opposite. So I love it.
Yeah, good for you. Good, sometimes things work out toward the end. So I'm very happy for you that you met the love of your life and you're doing well, man. In 2014, you opened Solar Studios and started Solar Music labels. Feel free to elaborate how difficult it was to put that together, and man, just so many names that have gone to that studio. And
well, I had a studio here in Orlando called Studio Z.
Yeah.
First, I had it in my house when I first moved to Florida.
Yep.
Then I moved it over downtown, but it was too costly. And then what happened is I'd have to do all this music I didn't want to do to have a recording studio. To pay the overhead in the studio.
Yeah.
I have to pay all this. I have to do some bands I would never want to produce. It's like, not my cup of thing. Not very good musicians. Not very good music. So when I became music director of Hard Rock Live, I had a small building on my property, and then I built it into it. When I started the Felix the Cat cartoons, I had bought this house, and the studio was in the bedroom, which is now my wife's piano studio. We did all the cartoons in one room, all, you know, my keyboard equipment and a sound booth and everything all in one room. And then I renovated this building I'm in now in about 2002, I think. And it got better and better and better. The hurricanes knocked down my roof at one point in time, and the whole roof caved in. And after it was cleaned up, we rebuilt. But when I came back in 2014, my engineer, Matt Brown, had totally refurbished and reconditioned the studio, and it was ready to rock. And then, you know, we started working. You know, I think our first projects were small ones of cartoon stuff. But, you know, by 2015, 16, I was working on John's record and other records. I just needed a place to work, you know. I really only need a computer for 60% of it to organize, because I organize everything on the computer first, make sure everything's in time and in tune. Then I can make suggestions, and I can edit and cut and paste and send somebody a little tiny section and say, they don't have any idea of what else is going on. Here, just play to this, send me your track. And I'd get it on the internet, fly it in, you know, let's say it's a lot of time, a lot of cost, a lot of heartache. And like I said, I do most of it. Now I got a brand new computer that'll do twice the work. It's great with all the sounds. And I get a lot of stuff free from companies that sponsor me. You know, I've always been a Kurzweil guy, so I've been sponsored by them, and you know, now I got IK and Spectrasonics, and so I get all the stuff and I put it in the computer. I've got these palettes, and I get lost in just going through, what sound is this? Oh my God, I got to use that someplace. You know, I've never heard that sound before. Okay, make a note of that. There's a sound to use. You know, so
Are you kind of, see, you're working in many projects at the same time? Are you kind of controlling freak? Are you very organized? You wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, man.
Oh, I would like to think that I'm organized. I sometimes, if I work on something for a long time and another thing comes up, I've got to backtrack, and I don't like to backtrack. I'm seeing like 10 different versions of one song I was working on with John, you know, and each one of them has their, you know, credibility. So now it's like, listen to it and say, okay, I like that part of that, and I like this part of that, and then start to put it together. You know, it's not like, I don't want to say it's not organic. It is organic, but for me, organic is everything being there and making. Do you know when you take your glasses off in the middle of the night, you put them on the table? Yeah. Right. You go to bed. 8 hours later, you get up and you just walk over to the table and pick up the glasses. You didn't put the glasses on the table every single night there. It's just, you have a retention of something. Your brain is working somehow. That's how I think of this music. I just thought of a thing before I got in line with you about a change to the violinist Jocelyn Sue. I'm doing her album, which will be out probably May, I think. And it's sort of like a tribute to all the great violinists in jazz, fusion, and rock and roll. And I just took a song from. Do you remember the band called "It's a Beautiful Day"?
I know the name. I don't recall. You know.
They had one album. Well, they had a couple albums, but they were only famous for one song called "White Bird." White bird in a golden cage on a winter's day in the rain. And it was a beautiful violin solo. And I kept hearing one of the songs that I'm doing, and I kept hearing White Bird at the same time. So now I found a way to permeate White Bird over that song. So it's like the last tribute to the last violinist that I needed to do. Jean-Luc Ponty, Robbie Steinhardt, you know, Jerry Goodman, all the great rock violinists. She's doing a song paying tribute to them, you know. So, plus she's doing her own thing.
Good for you, man. Let's talk a little bit about the John Anderson, A Thousand Hands, the project, obviously went dormant for many years, but I listened to the album again, and I went to when John Anderson was touring. I saw him at the Birchmer a couple years ago. What unbelievable show! What unbelievable album that is! That's a masterpiece, man.
Yeah, I mean, John loves the album.
Yeah,
I think that people say that, the best John Anderson album is Elias on Hill, which was one of my favorites. John's in my DNA. Believe it or not, Patrick Moraz, The Story of I, Elias on Hill, Carcass, Thick as a Brick, and The Firebird. Okay. If I had 5 albums, or maybe Joni Mitchell Travelogue, okay, if I had to 6, but with the whole idea of that long form, I love the long form. It's sitting down with a glass of wine or a gummy or something and listening to a full piece of music, not just a song. There's a place that you live for a while, and that's what I've sort of learned from John's thing. And so chapter 2 is a little bit more of a continuum than separate songs. There's a thread. There's a thread through the whole thing. And, some of it is coming up with a concept. So you come up with a concept for chapter 2. How do you, well, I mean, I understand what I did with chapter 1. And so I make it a continuation. There's an overture, a small overture. And then there's repeating of some things, slightly hinted. There's some quotes from chapter 1 on chapter 2. Maybe the average person won't hear it, but the musician will hear it. That kind of thing. Yeah. So they'll be looking like, "Where's Waldo?" No.
I know what you mean. When do you? Easy for me to say, but that's when that you think will be finished and available in a year from now, a couple of years from now.
No, I'm thinking about that. It's going to be. I'm hoping to release it April, before John. That's the point. Before John goes on tour again.
Yeah.
I'd like to release it April 16th, I think.
Okay, I'm seeing him again, John Anderson, in May 10, May 15. He's going to be playing here in Virginia in the Capitol. It's a new place called, I think, Capital One or something.
Yeah.
And I bought ticket with my wife and my son as well. Man, you have feel free to elaborate on the album Not in Kansas Anymore. That's another masterpiece, man. That's another.
Well, like I said, it started with the John sessions, Robbie coming in to play on Activate, and then I had Robbie play on Climb to Grace, which was a song originally. John had sent me a vocal that I was building that around that song, but it was what he had sent me was too similar to something else that had already been done, so we didn't do it. It's like a couple of things that get started and just there's so many better things, so that got pushed way to the back, And John would send me a couple songs a week, and then I'd be working on it. I'm working on one right now that's not even on chapter 2. That's a monster song that I heard it and I said, "Oh my God, I got to work on this." So I have 2 songs that are lengthy that are not on chapter 2 that are pretty much finished, but that'll be maybe chapter 3, But chapter 2 I hope it's going to be out by April. I intend to finish it by Christmas. I'm in the studio the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I got my shopping list, and I'm, starting Monday, I'm gonna in the studio 5 days a week working on it.
Do you that's great. Do you still people reach out to you and then, hey, can you work in this with me? Can you work with that? How you manage what you should be working? Well, you have certain tasks and certain goals in life that you want to accomplish, but at the same time, how you say no to people pinging you or pinging you. Can you look at that? How you make time for, you have 10 things on the table, how you pick the top 3 that you want to work now,
Well,
and then do the other next week or whatever, on a month.
yeah, well, I mean, if somebody sends me a track and then, you know, I make a schedule. You know, I'm one of these people, before I go to bed, I've got the pad there and I'm writing down what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
One of my folders that I do is John, and then I've got the list of all the songs, and then I've got what needs to be done. And the more I listen to in the car, okay, what I need to change in a mix, what I need, what vocal of his I need to bring up front, what note is not making me happy right now, you know, oh, there's a hole there that needs to be filled. Right. So I do have people pinging me, wanting me to be on the record. And I have some people that I've reached out to that I'm hoping they come to the party before I get to the end of the process. You know, I just met a new friend this last week and figured out what it would be in their wheelhouse to play. You know, sometimes it's like, okay, I get all these songs. I don't have anything that would make them sound like them. You know, you got to give them something that says, oh, I know where to be in that. Yeah, I know exactly where to be. And so I've got one song I'm going to send out to somebody on Monday, and I hope that they, you know, can get it done in a certain time. But then again, I got more than enough songs for chapter 2. What I've done is I put together my proposed template to John, and then we talk about it. He's made comments about what to do, this and that, and then, you know, we'll be happy, you know. But then again, he is the artist, you know. I can't get him to do or accept something that he doesn't want to do. You know, I mean, if he doesn't feel like that is him or whatever, I mean, I try to come up with ideas, like as a collaborator, as a friend. Hey, how about this? Oh, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, he is John Anderson, you know. I mean, the style and everything is him. So, you know, it's got to be like what he does, you know. I tell everybody, you know, he's in my musical DNA. I sort of, when I'm in that box, I sort of think about all the history of stuff I know from him, you know. And I've worked on enough music in the past. Has it really been 8 years? I mean, forget the meeting, but I mean, working on his music for like 8 years now.
Correct. Yeah.
You sort of have, like those glasses that you left on the table. There's a song way back there with a vocal part or an instrumental part that you think needs to be in this project. You know, so that's how my brain works. You get to see that, you know.
Yeah, gotcha.
He chopped out a part of chapter 1, which is just so beautiful. It's got to find a home someplace. To me, it's just so.
No, that's a beautiful. No, I completely agree. It's a beautiful album. Feel free to elaborate. Then Abigail, one, if I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, Chick Corea Children's Songs. That I heard that it's another important part of your life as well. So.
Well, you know, a chick invited me and my wife to come see a solo piano concert in Jacksonville. And he had done his part for chapter 1 and chapter 2. He told me how, man, that song is deep. The one Come Up, 1,000 Hands, Come Up. So because that had Coriel and Zap Mama and John Luke Ponty and, you know, Cast of Thousands on it. And the ending was sort of like a freelance orchestration that, you know, that we did. And I mean, I really love that. And anyway, I told him that I had met this young girl. My wife teaches all these Chinese kids, and a guy that she refers to her students to buy pianos from him. He called me up and said, hey, I got this little girl that wants to record a Christmas album at your studio. I said, come on, Bob, you know, I mean, I got to tune up the Bosendorfer, and, you know, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. It's a professional studio. It's not like a kid. No, don't worry about it. You got to hear her. So I said, okay, I will. She came in. She played 20 Christmas songs in 1 hour. Not jingle bells, but unbelievable arrangements
My
like
God.
a 50-year-old guy who really knew what he was doing with that emotion, not like kids would just play fast. She played like, oh my God. We were just in amazement. So anyway, we did the Christmas record. And then I kept thinking, and the funny thing is, her mom is from Shaman, where I lived. So we had that in common.
Good.
And her mother's a professor who worked in University of Buffalo, where I'm born. So we have a synergy. And they're really, really nice people. So they invited us to come over to Chinese New Year. So we went over to Chinese New Year, and at their house, they had a piano and a keyboard. So Abigail would play the piano for me, and then she'd say, how can I say this in a polite way? She's a little bit, they say she's not on the spectrum, but she's a very special kid. You know, she look up the ceiling and play unbelievable. She's got the retention she has is unbelievable. So I'm thinking, what can I do with this little girl? Oh, there's so many Asian pianists doing classical music. You know, it's almost boring. So Chick had given me the children's songs book to give to my wife. So I got it. The glasses are over there, right? I got the Chick Corea's children book. I gave it to Abigail. The next week I went back there, and she had memorized 10 of the songs.
Wow.
Now, I got to tell you, I can't speak for Chick Corea, but I remember in a conversation and something I saw on the internet that when he was playing the children's songs, he said, well, I really don't play them exactly like it's an improvisation. It's very difficult for me to remember what I did. Well, Abigail played everything note for note of the recording. Now, I've seen some older guys have done like number 1 or number 3, the famous ones. Nobody's attempted like number 18, the impossible one. But she came into the studio and she played all of them from memory, no music.
Unbelievable, man. Yeah.
And I had piano players over here for the live performance, and they're all just like looking at each other. It's like, oh my God, she's 10 years old. 10.
Yeah, some people are gifted, though. There's no way around it. Or yeah, maybe the spectrum or hyperactivity or
No, I'm talking about her. The spectrum is a medical term as far as, I mean, maybe there's some, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but some slight autism.
We are all in my family. I know exactly what you're saying. So
yeah, so her brain is in a certain place where she can do that kind of thing,
In my family, many, including myself, were labeled kind of hyperactive, weird kid who couldn't stand still. I'm in the spectrum myself. I have a little bit of autism, a little bit Asperger, and I manage well. Was difficult at the beginning, the first 18 years, because I couldn't concentrate. Remember that kind of spectrum became a term in DSM-4, and doctor didn't know what to do with you. You were labeled, hyper weird kid who couldn't stand still. You would not accomplish anything in your life, and I was kind of in that area, and medication didn't exist, and my parents were pissed off at me. I wasn't taking life seriously. Now, 38 years later, I have 7 college degrees. I'm a teaching assistant at Harvard, and I work for a very good company, or I own another company. I do a lot of stuff, and I'm very happy. I was born that way, and I manage. Like with you, talking to you right now, I'm listening to you. I'm looking at my note, and ideas are rushing to my head about stuff that I would like to do that I haven't done, that I would like to do.
Yeah.
It's like a gift. Some people need to know how to. It's like an onion. You need to put it together and then unravel that gift. And it's complicated, but that's the best thing that happened to me. I'm very lucky that I was born that way. Nowadays people take amazing in the morning, and like my son, and there was diagnosed. They went to DSM-4, and you're not a weird kid anymore, and you have special attention at school. But that's that's the best thing that happened to me. So, you know,
Well, I mean, some of it for me is to stay active, because I've seen so many people that sort of retired. You know, like I said, I turned 70. My dad had both Alzheimer's and dementia
Yep.
when he passed away at 82. And but he had signs of it long before that. And so my active brain stimulation by working on musical projects, the music stimulates my brain. I'm learning Vietnamese right now.
Good for you.
I still have to deal with the Chinese because one just walked in the door and she left. You know, so I want to give my brain as much food as possible.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that I can be like so many of my friends. I'm working with so many octogenarians right now. I'm working with Lou Christie, who just turned 80. I'm learning what I just did an album with Tommy Rowe that will be released in January. A dear friend of mine, had big hits in the 70s. He just turned 80. John's 78.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, Jerry Ellison just passed. He was 83. So I've got a lot of respect for these people who still stick with it. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't turn 65 and retire to go play golf, because that's all that's doing is saying, pick out your gravesite right now and dig the hole, because you'll be there soon. You know,
Absolutely.
I got to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I have only 2 questions left, Michael. Looking back at your life, is anything that you have changed or would have done differently, you know, looking back, and or
Yeah,
you're happy, you know, or
for sure. I would have moved to China when I was 20.
yeah,
I would have learned more languages.
yeah,
I would have took serious conducting lessons, and I would have devoted more time towards the facility of reading and writing music for the whole spectrum of instruments when I was younger. You know, I'd say, you know, that I learned more languages, went and lived in a foreign place like China, where business is so down and dirty that you would become a realist and come back and be able to deal with, you know, things, because they know how to do business. They know all the strategies because their culture is so old. You know, Western cultures are not as vicious as them, because we're not as in need as they are. You know, in China, you never own your own home. You buy a piece of land with a house on it, and the house will fall apart, but you only get 70 years when you buy a house. Then it goes back to the government. So realistically, Chinese people have to rent their entire life. And a house is so expensive that what do you mean? You buy it? No, you can never buy it. Nobody's got that much money to buy a house. So they're always in the need of money. So their temperament of what they need out of life is so much different than ours. Luckily, I've saved my wife from it, but I learned about how to enjoy your life a little bit better. And the material things, I've accumulated a lot of junk, but I've accumulated a lot of junk that makes equity, then get rid of it. Because they're, you know, like I got a beautiful piano here, you know, it belonged to a dear friend of mine. That's why I bought it. But, you know, I mean, it's a lot more than I can use in here. And there'll be a time when I just say, okay, I want to get it off to some concert hall or some church or university where it'll do more good than me, you know, because it doesn't get played enough, the instrument that it is. Even if I play it every day, it deserves more of a home. But it's in a studio, and it's, you know, people are playing on it. But I just think that everything, in reality, everything that you do, the equity that you put into it, you know, I don't like fancy cars. I don't like everything. Everything is for my freedom to be able to deal in music. That's it. It's all about having. What are you doing today, Michael? I'm working on some music. I don't know what yet. After lunch, I'll tell you.
Any artists that you wish that you have the opportunity to produce their album or work with him, or whatever.
Well, I think
There were
there's
so many people, so it's
well, the
hard.
thing is that I wish that I could have. I wish I could do something real besides just play piano behind McCartney singing old songs. I really wish that I could have done something with McCartney. Now I did. I don't know if you ever saw the John Lennon thing that I did.
No, I have not. I need to
Oh,
check that.
I will send it to you. It
Yeah, that
got
would be great. Yeah.
critical acclaim from everybody, including George Martin's son, of what it was. It was
Yeah.
I did the isolated tracks of A Day in a Life, and I put every Beatles song under Lennon's vocal.
Yeah.
And then I had Ella Ortega doing the video, the Beatles cartoons behind it. You know what he does. I'll send it to you. It's an amazing piece.
Yeah, we'll love to hear
But
it.
I would like to seriously do something with McCartney, and the other person I'd like to seriously do something with is Joni Mitchell. Other than that, I mean, there's a lot of great artists out there, but nothing that. Oh, and Ian Anderson, I've reached out to him, and I'd like to orchestrate something for him. So he's a wonderful guy. He's played on 2 of my albums for free, for John and for Robbie, and he's one of the most intelligent people that I've ever had a chance to talk to. I mean, in fact, we had an interview with him for a friend of mine who does PBS. We went along for the interview, and I mean, very, very smart guy. He suffers no fools, including me. So,
yeah. And the last question, feel free to elaborate your website where people can buy music. What music do you have?
solarmusic.com.
Yeah.
Solarmusic.com. And if you go to Michael Franklin Solar Music on Facebook, you can see I normally put up my activities, what I'm doing, and
yeah, I got you.
I'm very active.
I got you. Solar music, that remind me of I don't know if a German band called Grofschnitt that did a famous track called Solar Music, which is very popular in the world of progressive music in the 70s and 80s. It was very good. It was very nice talking to you, Michael. You're a great guy, man. You know, I know I took almost 2 hours of your time. I will send you the link when we're done, and we need to stay in touch. Feel free to come here when you're in town, or I'm going to be visiting Gabe Treyer soon in Florida, so we'll get together for dinner soon, and then feel free to ping me if there's anything I can do from my end, man. So
great, man. Great to meet you. I thank Gabe for getting the opportunity for us to talk.
sure.
I just sent Gabe some music to play on, and and we'll see if that one makes chapter 2. I'll try to get him on here in the next 3 weeks. So anyway, talk to you soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Okay. Bye-bye.